Good morning and welcome to Sunday Story Hour, where we share real stories of how human design has helped our guests to know themselves on a deep transformative level. By knowing and trusting ourselves, we develop deeper, more honest relationships and unlock our true gifts. I'm Kathy Bashanko, and my guest this week is Brynja Magnusson. Brynja is a 2-5 emotional generator, right angle cross of the Sphinx. And many of you know her as Shamanic. That is the name of her website, her Etsy store, and how she does commerce. And most of you who know her will know her for her fabulous book on incarnation crosses, as well as some of her other books. I'm actually on vacation in Airbnb, so I just have these two with me. But her human design card deck is phenomenal, and I'm now going to get her Yin Mysticism book and cards with this nice Black Friday sale. If you're watching this live, you still have time to take advantage of that. Anyway, I'm very excited, as I know a lot of people are, to speak to you. And I would just like to start out by saying thank you. And if you can tell us a little bit about yourself, including how you wound up so deeply immersed in all this work.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
That's a lot to respond to. I'm sorry.
For the beautiful introduction. And very rarely am I introduced with my company name. So thank you for doing that as well. Right. To hear it. How did I get involved in human design? That's the question. Well, I was 22, I think, and I was about to start a apprenticeship with a shaman over in France. I was going to go live in his house and study with him for a prolonged period. And he said, okay, you're going to get here in 6 months when you finish school. You're going to come live here. And before you get here, buy this textbook of human design and learn the system and know it by the time you get here. It was like a prerequisite. And the gene keys as well, which I actually ended up not picking up for another year. But
yeah, it's a lot to do at once, huh?
Yeah, and I thought the gene keys was going to be like a genetic code, and I was too intimidated by it, so I didn't pick it up. And then it ended up just, blowing my mind when I finally did start reading it. But and then when I started living over there, I was living with a couple of people who were using human design professionally in their lives. So everyone that I was in the house with was speaking in human design terms all the time. So anyone who came into the house, we were discussing that and we were talking about people. So I got the basics, and then I was inundated with being around human design. And then about 3 or 4 years ago, I started writing about the ways that I had kind of structured human design with other systems that I was using in my personal practice, like the i-ching, like animal totem divination or symbolism. And then whatever I was ending up studying, I was trying to publish my notes so that other people could use it as well. That's how I ended up doing the Incarnation Cross guidebook and the Human Design deck. And there's also periods where I'm very disenchanted with human design, and I, worry that I might not be the right person to be speaking on it. But we all have our contribution to bring and share. And so for now, that's what I've been doing for the last few years.
So, okay, there's several things I'm hoping to remember to go back to here. So first of all, I'd like to go back to, you acknowledged that I used your company name, and I love on your website, you explain the meaning of it. Do you want to just quickly tell people what that means to you?
Yeah, which is great because I think it's a bit of a complicated name. But so Ceremonience is from the two Latin root names, ceremony, ceremonia, to be in, a ceremony or a sacred ritual, something, a sacred event. And ance, the suffix, means to be in. So I put those two words together, mean to be in ceremony. It's the state of being in ceremony. And so I write on different topics. And so far in the beginning of my work, it's been mostly focused on human design and the i-ching and animal totems. But it's, I plan to continue with all different areas of spirituality and energetics, and personal practices that are most helpful, whatever that is. And that will go far beyond human design. It just so happens that human design has such a big following that's kind of where I've had the most success.
So, okay, I'm sitting here as a sixth line who I just celebrated my 60th birthday this past week. And I am blown away by how far into your journey you are at 30 years old. And now you tell me at 22, you are already making plans to go be with a shaman. And I'd have to know, part of it is I know that, as we are more evolved, we raise more evolved children. And I'm just really curious how you wound up at 22 deciding to go work with a shaman. What was your degree that you were studying in school leading up to that?
I was studying, I couldn't make up my mind. I wanted to be an artist. I wanted to work in healthcare. I wanted to be a successful businesswoman. I wanted to, impress my parents. And so I couldn't decide. So I ended up getting I wanted to be a paramedic. I ended up getting my degree in advertising and marketing, which it just made me sick. I couldn't do it. So as soon as I got my degree, I said, I need to be working in the health field in some way. So then I went and I got my massage therapy license just to have a day job where I could be understanding the human body a little bit better, and then finding other ways to work with the spirit. But mainly it was that I was sick. I kind of started to get sick in my stomach around when I was 19. And I attribute this in part to going down the wrong path for me, and not committing to something more meaningful and deep with my life. And being sick, there's nothing like being sick that makes you reevaluate every part of your life and trying to figure out what's wrong with me. And nobody seemed to know. There's something wrong with my digestion and autoimmune was kind of a mystery. And then I started to have these really spiritual experiences out of the blue. And after a few of those, it became really clear that there was something else going on in this world. And my job was to study that. And it was a huge relief to kind of get this kind of initiatory experiences that say, go study shamanism, which I was very resistant to. I didn't want to be, a white woman from Westchester kind of masquerading through indigenous practices. But there was a desire to seek out more understanding of what's going on. And then the lovely realization, especially when you're 22 and you kind of figure out what you think you're supposed to be doing with your life, and then you find out that you're not going to have any idea what you're really doing for a long time. And that you don't get to jump into the deep end of understanding things. And might not ever come. And that all you can do is just kind of keep picking up systems and symbols and education and perspectives. And then if you just keep having curiosity and exploring outwardly and inwardly, then, some things start to piece together in a way that you can't really understand. And so there was kind of a big humbling as well, further into the journey that I got. But you don't really know. You don't really know how things work. But at least you can still share the things that have been helping you. And that's what I've been doing.
Yeah. So you finished college with this degree in advertising and marketing, and you say, okay, mom, dad, right? You grew up in a traditional parenting relationship. Okay. Don't want to assume, but it is Westchester, right? So you said you grew up in Westchester, but okay. So you grow up, you go and you do this traditional college path, and then you say, okay, I'm going to, you said France?
Yep.
You study shamanism. What kind of response did you get from your family from that?
Well, They're pretty good. I was really blessed that I have two spiritual parents in their own way. And they also knew I'd been struggling, like I'd been sick. And this really seemed to be, the path. But in a funny way, it's like my entire life with my parents, at least in my adult life, it's been like one coming out after another, where I have to come to them and I say, I'm doing this now. And it's going to be a little bit weird, now I'm going to publish a book and everyone's going to know I'm into this weird stuff. And now I'm going to publish another book about some other weird stuff and everyone's going to know. And in a way, it's like this fun every part of my creative cycle or my journey is going to my parents and saying, all right, well, here's the new thing that I'm doing. And they get on board. And it's wonderful.
Yeah. Which was the hardest one for them to get on board with? What was the hardest thing you remember sharing with them?
For my mother, it was the last book that I just wrote.
The Yin Mysticism.
Because, it dives into topics of the feminine in ways that are very mucky. Yin, it can be very dark, it can be very sensual. It can be it's very stigmatized. And part of the book where I'm writing about the Vesica Pisces, that was kind of the original premise of the book. And the Vesica Pisces is this symbol, which is typically associated with the yoni. And yeah, she was a little bit worried about how that was going to be taken.
And how has it been taken?
Huh?
How has it been received? How's it been taken?
I still don't know yet. I think this last book that I just made has been the most scary. I have no idea how it's going to be received. Making it was like a whirlwind in which I almost didn't understand what was going on while I'm making it. I had an experience about 4 years ago that kind of tripped off the journey that said, you should write a book or you should do something. It was like I was just trying to figure it out for myself. That's what most of my books are, is me trying to figure it out for myself. And then, and so this book was like me being really confused about these like archetypes of yin and grief and the mother, and the Vesica Pisces and like the dark end of things and like what's going on there. And I couldn't really find the right content I was looking for. So I just kind of started to investigate it myself. And I thought, well, maybe someone else, at least one other person in the world might be looking for similar content. But it was also much more my theory than any of my other books. Everything else was kind of like taking somebody else's theory, like human design, where it was maybe a bit confusing and then trying to clarify it, make like a guidebook, a clarifying guidebook. But the Yin mysticism is like much more theory-based, kind of like philosophy, in my opinion, which is totally nerve-wracking to put out into the world. And
that's where you have a 2-5, right?
Yeah. And so it was really scary making this book. I was constantly thinking like, this is the worst thing that's ever been made. And I have no idea what I'm doing and it's going to be a big mess. But then also at the same time, I'm talking about a topic that's messy.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, I love hearing books like where sometimes things come through you and you don't know, you're not making it for anyone. You're just making it because it has to come out. And like this book had to come out. And until it came out, I was kind of like torturing me on the inside. And I often make this joke that all my books and my products are like my children. And they come through me. I get the idea, but then they are born through me. And then they're not me anymore. And they've become something else in the world. And I have to trust that the world's going to receive them. And I can do my best to promote them and be their mom, kind of. But I can't make anyone receive it well. I can't make sure that it's going to do well in the world. And it'll do it itself. And so I kind of like let all my kids like run along into the world. And this last child, the Yin Mysticism book, feels like the child I'm most worried about, where I feel like they're going to need the most help.
Vulnerable.
Yeah, like nobody's going to get them. And like maybe I need to kind of give people a preface of like how it works. And like, are you going to be okay? So I'm still waiting to see how it's being received.
And I can see where, if you feel that way about the work, how your mother would feel that way about you putting that work out there, right? It's this whole thing, like, as a mother of a young adult daughter, I know, they say when they're little that, like, to have a child is to have your heart walk around outside your body, right? But it's more than that, because it's so, like, your heart, well, I guess you don't really control. You can do things that affect how your heart health is, right? In a way that you can't, like, once your child is an adult, they're them. And to watch them do vulnerable things is scary, but at the same time, it's so, like, I'm so proud when my daughter takes risk like that. So I'm sure your mom is very proud of it. And I do just want to say, because you mentioned something to me beforehand, that tell our viewers a little bit about who your mom is. Or what is
my mother, she's an artist, and she was in her day a bit of a prolific artist. So she was an illustrator at Marvel Comics, and she was one of the first female illustrators at Marvel. And that was a big deal. And they gave her Red Sonja. That was one of her big first breaks, that she was the pencilist for Red Sonja. She drew those comics. And Red Sonja hasn't been picked up by the more modern Marvel movies. Not yet.
Right.
But she was, in her time, back in, I think it was the 80s, she was one of their comics. And she was kind of the female counterpart to Conan, Red Sonja.
Yeah. Okay. So that's cool. My daughter's name is Sonia, so I love that. So, okay, now, so you wrote this book, and I'm wondering if you have it somewhere handy, and if this doesn't work right now, that's fine. But so, Angela, who is very excited to be here, said, I'd love to hear a reading from this book and the incarnation book if there's time, but we'll go into the incarnation stuff later. But is there a certain part, like, if this is your child, is there a certain page that you feel like really speaks to you of that?
It's my fourth child,
right?
And I did make a card deck to go with it, because it's very dense. It's a very dense book, and like sometimes you're not supposed to read dense books front to back. Sometimes you want to just take it in pieces.
Yeah, so you can just draw a card and see what and then look up the part. Yeah,
I made that. I also did an audio book, and so the book is separated into a couple of different sections. And the first section is kind of basic constituents of yin, like basic theory. The second part of the book is how to conduct yourself through a yin way of seeing the world, like how you hold power in a yin way, how you can attract in a yin way, how you can manifest things in a yin way, how the brain can work in a yin way. Then the next part is the seasons, and how we cultivate the yin and the yang in the seasons to make sure that we have a very prosperous year. And there are very specific actions in each part of the year that you can do to make sure that in 5 months from now, you're going to be having a really good time. And it's an
immediate gratification that we're all taught to go for, right?
What was that?
Instead of just going for the immediate gratification that we're taught to go for, like, seize the day, right?
Yeah. And that you want to be
like tomorrow,
thinking for each season that there's this like very specific way that you can work with yin and yang. But then like the real meat and potatoes of the book is in the fourth section, the life and death cycle, which is the real archetype of it, which is that we have yin phases of our life, which are like really intense. It's the bookends of life, the very beginnings of life, being in the womb, pregnancy, birth, depression, chaos, like Bardo, massive change, like the Kali archetype. Then there's a little bit on yin health. And then the end of the book, I talk about human design a little bit, and how that we can look at yin in human design.
Okay. I have to interrupt, because I'm telling you, I'm sitting here right now, and there's a part of me that's going, oh God, I should have ordered the book before I got on this call, because now everyone's going to order this book in card deck, and I'm not going to get one.
Oh no, you'll get one. Don't worry.
Okay.
Don't worry.
I'm very excited about it right now. I just sent it to my niece in Thailand, so as a gift, because it really, just the feeling of it really spoke to me about her in general. So I haven't gotten her feedback yet, but I've been very intrigued since I first read that you were writing this book, and I follow you on Instagram. She's Ceremonious on Instagram. And I love some of the little, reels that you've done where you've had some of the artwork behind you and you've talked about some of those things. So is there a part that you might want to just read? Or is that not feel, if that doesn't feel?
I would love to. It's so hard to pick one. Did something in that?
Like picking your, there was some stuff you were talking about. I remember about menstruation that was really interesting.
Menstruation.
Yeah, there was something you were talking about the cycle. And I don't remember the specifics of it.
There's this really interesting perspective of how where you're menstruating during the moon cycle informs you about what's the best action for you to take during, your life process. And this is not my original idea. This came from Tammy Kent. She's a pelvic bowl body worker. She had said that when you are getting your period on the full moon, this is a more active time to go out into the world, travel, to put yourself out there. But when you're getting your period on the new moon, it's your body, your system, your soul, your spirit is saying you really need to rest now. Like something's going on where you need to take time and not be going out so much. So if you're debating on if you should be going out and doing a lot, and you're getting your period on the new moon, your period
tomorrow for us.
Yeah. Right. So it's telling you a lot about what's going on within you, but you can also kind of look at, all of our relationships to fluids also informs us about our intuition. So how our fluids are moving in our body is like this very kind of sacred relationship. And when we release tears, maybe that's one of my favorite quotes from the book. I'll go into that section.
Oh, good.
Is that every time water releases from our body, we're gaining some insight about what's going on within us. And we can work with it as like a ritual and like really be very actively aware of what that's telling us. And so I went into all the different ways that we release water from the body, which is urine, which is sweat, which is breath, which is stool, also very interesting, tears, reproductive fluids, and all of them have this kind of sacredness to it that does something for our spirit. So I'll read from the tears section. So while tears do not make the list of a daily loss of fluid, their significance needs no explanation. To cry is a ceremonial act. It tethers us to the core of our sensations, then liberates us from them. To cry is to change ourselves, change our hormones, and change our state of being. It is among the most healthy actions we can take for ourselves, especially when an unmanageable situation is upon us. Crying gives us both the relief and the composure to continue on. The more regularly we can cry, the less painfully constipated our emotions become, and the better equipped we are to care for ourselves. In Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor E. Frankl wrote of an experience in the Auschwitz concentration camp. He wrote, "But there was no need to be ashamed of tears, for tears bore witness that a man had the greatest of courage, the courage to suffer. Only very few realized that. Shamefacedly, some confessed occasionally that they had wept, like the comrade who answered my question of how he had gotten over his edema by confessing, 'I have wept it out of my system.' Frankl saw a man's body heal its severe water retention through the outlet of tears. Francis Weller wrote in The Wild Edge of Sorrow that when he asked a particularly joyful woman how she maintained such an uplifting temperament, despite the sorrows of her life, she responded, 'Because I cry a lot.' Our sacrosanct tears come as an ocean swell, whether we desire their arrival or not. To know the supremely beneficial, balancing, and ceremonial nature of tears lets us give ritual more reverence and respect." Anyways, I was crying a lot when I wrote this picture.
It's beautiful. Yeah. Okay. So I think we could do a whole hour easy just talking about that. But I know a lot of people are interested in your beautiful, beautiful book on the Incarnation Cross. And I would like to say, I want to first address the comment you made early on where you said you didn't know if human design was where you belonged. And I'd just love for you to expand on that thought a little bit before we get into this.
Yeah, I think it's very normal for people to kind of, as they go through many, many years of studying human design, be disenchanted with it, stop liking it, or come back to it. There has been ways that I've seen human design being used that's very distasteful to me, where it becomes very dogmatic, becomes very controlling, it becomes kind of religious in a way where it's, people pointing fingers at each other saying, you have to act like that, and you're not supposed to be doing that, and I can tell you how to be acting. And it's like, whoa, that's not a system I want to be associated with. I personally, through my own usage of it, I've gotten to the point where I don't really want to talk to anybody about human design. I want to use it in the most basic parts for myself in my daily life. And there's no need to talk about it because it really mentalizes it. And I was talking a lot about this at the High Desert Human Design Conference about human design racism, where we take human design and we look at other people's charts and we say, this person's causing problems and I don't like that design. And because someone has that design, they're causing problems. And there's just there's a lot of conflict, and it's very easy to start to think about human design in this way where someone's not doing it right. There's a lot of controlling dialogue. People are always acting this way, and they should never do that. And it's the whole point of human design is that you're the only one telling you how to act, and that you shouldn't be telling anyone else how to act. And yet it's being used in the opposite way, where it is telling everybody how to act. So there's partly that's been very disenchanting. And I kind of feel like if I'm going to just blow through the human design world and leave my little 2 cents, part of my 2 cents is that I at least want to address that I think that is a dangerous way that it's being handled, that we can benefit from human design as long as we don't use it that way. And then the other thing is that I'm not like a big studier. I am not know every single part of the system. I know I was actually very comforting to go to the Human Design Conference because that was validated in a really nice way. I'm not a first line. I am not here to go deep studying. I am not here to learn every part and be a scholar of any system. I'm a 2-5. I'm here to blow through if there's a call and leave my 2 cents and then keep going. And there have been times where I've been really chewed out for not being completely expert. I am not really an expert in human design. I just kind of ended up going down a rabbit hole in a couple of areas. And I like to be very clear and forthright about that. I'm really not the end all be all expert. I do like the way I explain human design. Of course, I have preference for my own perspective because I'm always trying to bring human design back to felt sensations. And that's where I find it most beneficial. But I've got people who are top tier analysts, OG analysts. And I find sometimes the way that they're using human design super harmful, super effective, super hurtful. So human design, it's a slippery slope. I guess that's what I would say. The twofold reasons.
Yeah, I can see that. I can understand. And that's kind of why, even though I understand sometimes people just want a reading, what I really like to do is to work with people for at least a month, ideally 3 months, to help them to not necessarily become an expert at their design, but to understand it in a way that doesn't become dogmatic, to understand what the different parts are in a way that help them know them as a way to trust themselves instead of a way to give over their power to a system, right? But I'm wondering, when you first read this book back at 22, right? So what did he have you read? The Definitive Book of Human Design or something like that?
Yeah, the one with the red, Linda Brunel.
Oh, okay. That's the black cover. It's black and red kind of, right?
Yeah, it's a red cover. And so I went through the basics there. And then, when I was living with a lot of people who were talking about it, come to find out later, I don't really agree with the way that a lot of those people were talking about human design, because what they were saying were things like, you shouldn't speak unless I tell you to. You have an open throat, and so I really started to have issues speaking. I actually lost my voice for a few years because I was surrounded by people telling me, you're not allowed to speak until spoken to. You're not allowed to have an opinion unless I ask you for it. And it was just this very unhealthy, control-based, where it's I was seeing people saying to their wives, it was an MG husband saying to a projector wife, you're not allowed to talk to me about our marriage until I like you, until I give you permission. It's just super, not cool by any standard for me.
Right.
But I didn't know that at the time because everybody else knew more than I did. And also, there have been a few people in my life who are not into human design, and I've tried to talk to them about it, and they've become extremely hurt and extremely freaked out by human design. And it's in part, I think, really because when you come at certain people with this very stereotyping language, it hurts people. It scares people. And I'm really grateful to have had the experience where I freaked someone out and then understood how I was not holding this information very lightly. Knowing it's sad and use at people in a way that was very confining.
And I don't know if you're familiar with quantum human design language at all, with Karen Curry. I know you spoke at one of the conferences, the first conference I went to, you spoke at remotely, and that's how I found out about your book. But, that language is much more empowering, but I feel like understanding that. So, I mean, not trying to compare it to a religion, because it's really not a religion, but I think of it as, people just, the difference between Old Testament and New Testament, and neither one of them is the complete truth, and they're not the complete truth together either, right? So human design is one tool. Quantum human design is another tool that's a more evolved language. There's a certain level of understanding you get from reading the original language, but it's dark. There's a lot of darkness in there, and there's nothing wrong with the dark as long as you don't become overcome by the dark, right? You have to be able to step into the light, and but I do think then your approach to the Gene Keys, you found that after you got to Francis when you read the Gene Keys, or did you?
Then I started to get more exposure to it. I was really enjoying it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love Richard Rudd's perspective.
Yeah, and so, but to understand the Gene Keys, I think without a human design foundation, again, would be difficult. Although I don't know, because I've never approached it from that way. And then I also look at, okay, are we really able to truly understand any of them if we don't go back and understand the I-ching? And did you already know the I-ching before you met?
I did. That was one of my first systems. My mom taught me how to throw it when I was a teenager.
To throw
it's wonderful. When you come to the end of the road and your mom's like, I don't know what else we can do, what I can tell you. Let's go throw the I-ching.
Right.
It's so comforting.
And some people might not even know that term, throw the I-ching. Can you explain what that means?
Yeah, the I-ching is the oldest divination system in the world, that at least it still has had a constant running lifetime. It's a 3,000-year-old book that is possibly up to 15,000 years old through an oral tradition. So it's this very, very ancient system from China. And it was it's like 64 pieces of advice. And you can, either throw coins or yarrow sticks to receive one of these pieces of advice. And the way it was used in ancient history was that we were living in a scary world with danger and spirits, and the wilds to traverse. And these pieces of advice would tell you how to proceed. And the I-ching means the now, the present moment. So you would receive a proverb for your present moment. And through thousands and thousands of years, there's been a lot of additions to the book, a lot of different perspectives on the book. And it finally came to the US in English in like around 1950, I think. And it's in modern times, you can use this book in a divinatory capacity that is just uncannily accurate. And it doesn't have to be in like these, tarot style ways of reading. You say, what's going on with me right now? Or what do I need to know? And I would say you throw the I-ching when you're in a moment of chaos, confusion, or indecision. You don't know where to go. When you come to the end of the road, you throw for one of these hexagrams, and it tells you where you are right now. It like shines a ray of light into your situation. And sometimes it gives you really specific advice. And sometimes it just tells you where you are. And there are these wonderful ancient, partly Confucian, partly, metaphysical pieces of advice. It's very complex and lovely.
That's how I love your animal totem book, because this one here has animal totem and the I-ching, and it has, instead of just going and having just the I-ching or just the human design, like right now, I believe the sun is still in gate 34. So that's the power horse. And the I-ching, so you have a little paragraph for the I-ching, a little paragraph for human design, a little paragraph for gene keys. You have your little animal totem section, and then you have a message for the reverse totem. So rather than throw a coin, you can just pull a card, right?
Yeah,
and it can be a similar way to give you some inspiration, something to contemplate. And, and I love all of these things that you're doing. And, but, it's one of those things, it's kind of like, I'm the youngest of 9 kids, and we all know what it's like to always have to live up to the oldest child, right? And your oldest child is this, right? Or was it deck first?
It was animal totems.
You wrote animal totems first?
That was my first book. I technically had made the human design deck beforehand, but it wasn't really finished, so I took it off the shelves. But like my official big launch was animal totems. That's my first child.
Yeah. Oh, okay. That's awesome. Well, I love this book. And there's certain parts of it that, like, I always remember when I read, because my conscious sun is gate 8, and that's the peacock. And when I read your bit about the peacock feathers being like not so much color as crystalline, was it some kind of crystals that reflect the light in the feathers? And I went out, and I don't have it here, but normally when I'm at home, I have a peacock feather right behind me on my desk, because it's so like, oh yes, remember that, it's how we reflect things that really gives us our beauty. Like, that really spoke to me. So, but okay. So I'd love if we can make a little transition, because now we have about 20 minutes left, and I'd love to spend some time talking about incarnation crosses. So as the person running the conversation, I'm going to be selfish and start with me. So my incarnation cross is left angle cross of uncertainty. And I really have found the meanings that I have read different places so different. I've read some that make it sound like a very materialistic kind of cross, right? That it's all about, that I'm to help people have enough material wise. Like it just didn't the whole way, or that I'm meant to have all this material wealth, or whatever, that just, it didn't resonate. And not that I don't want material wealth. I'd love to always have enough material wealth to get through all times of uncertainty. But when I read your interpretation in the book here, I really started to understand it from a different perspective. And I really realized recently that that's what I do in my mentoring. I help people to navigate the uncertainties of understanding who they really are, and the scary parts about really trusting yourself and your own authority, in a way that doesn't say, well, what's my mom going to think? What's my husband going to think? What are my neighbors going to think? What if I lose everything when I quit my job? What if I, like, I don't tell them what to do, but I help them navigate those uncertainties in a way where they feel more empowered and, a sense of trust. But I'm wondering if I know you don't have them all memorized, but are there any things that you feel like you want to say about that cross?
Yeah, but what a lovely cross. And it's one of these like such juicy crosses with like the least juiciest name. I would name them all differently if I could, but uncertainty makes it sound like unstable, like there's like a lack of knowing what's going to happen. And the reason it's named uncertainty is after Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, which I'm sure Ra was like really into at the moment that he was naming things. And so the uncertainty principle says that when things move really fast, you don't know where they're going to go. I think that's how it goes. Oh, no. When things are moving quickly, you do know where they're going to end up more often. And when things are moving slowly, particles are moving slowly, they could go anywhere. You can't predict how they're going to go. And in my mind, I always think of this as an extremely sacral-based incarnation cross. And there's a couple of crosses that are so sacral-based. Even if you're not a generator, they are still very focused. I also think about this with the cross of contagion as well, because that's cross is kind of about like being turned on and spreading that turn on. And I think of turn on as like the real term for a generator is that they're living through turn on or not. And so uncertainty has the 14th gate in it. And the 14th gate is like super magnificently, just like it's this very abundant sacral gate. And you can think of it also like a genetic archetype, the way that Richard Rudd might describe it, is that even if you don't have your sacral in this defined state, you're still working with the archetype of sacral abundance. If you have the 14, you're still pulling in this archetype around you. And so that 14th gate, I think the 14th gate is really where it gets its name from. And that is to say that the 14th gate is in the individual circuitry, which says that things have to be new and different and weird. And pretty much if you want to unlock the key to the treasure chest of wealth and abundance and sacral that the 14th is supposed to give access to, then you have to be doing something different. You just can't really unlock that if you're on the beaten path, right? Huge uncertainty there. And so that 14th gate is so heightened in the cross of uncertainty that it's really saying, and with the eighth gate as well with it.
I was just thinking that.
It's prompting you to be different. And if you are different, then there's a huge uncertainty of what's going to happen with that abundance that's going to get unlocked. And I love saying this to people who have the 14-2, the whole channel, which I have the 14-2, so I can speak on this personally. It's like, if you want to, the road to success is the road through Freaky Town.
Freaky Town.
You have to go through Freaky Town if you want success, if you're 14-2. And I think that still applies if you just have the 14 in the cross of uncertainty, and there's a huge fear and leap of faith to go into Freaky Town because there's no guarantee. There's going to be no assurance that if you are following that abundance of what the 14th gate wants you to pursue, that it's going to work out. And it's very scary. It's very uncertain. And so it's a very, very juicy cross. I did use the example of a friend of mine named Juliet. I think I used her real name in that chapter.
Yes, you did.
Okay.
6-2 project generator, which I'm a 6-2, but a projector, which at the beginning, I don't mean to interrupt, but at the beginning I was like, how can I have my 2 sun gates on this undefined sacral what is this supposed to do? So I feel like it's magnified, amplified all of the messages of the cross of uncertainty. But anyway, continue about Juliet.
What we had said that, every person she ended up being around for much time, especially her partners in the past, they all started accumulating wealth. But when people say wealth associated with the 14th gate, like we think of it for money and material resource, but the root origin is sacral, because sacral wealth is true wealth. That is the root of wealth. Wealth will come out of good sacral response. And if you are a projector, you're working with just as much, if not more, sacral energy. You're just working with it counterintuitively. You are channeling it. You are taking it and like bending it, like you're taking it from others and working with it and then moving it. So if you have that 14th gate, you're going to be working with sacral abundance just as much, but there's like more nuance to it because you're receiving it. You're around it. You manipulate it in a different way than you would if you had the sacral mind. That's how I see it, at least. What else would I want to say about that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. So I want to add, I noticed that Jennifer Balcom is watching, and I know, Jennifer, your cross of contagion, she says, you're speaking to me. I have the 8 and the 14 in my cross as well, because she's cross of contagion. And so Mariana says, does Freaky Town also apply to the 1-8 channel above it? I feel like the mayor of Freaky Town, but I don't have the 14 too. And I think that's very much applies to all individual energy, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Absolutely.
I think of my sister who has the 14-2 and the 43-23, and I think she has the 1 but not the 8, or vice versa. I think she has the 1 defined. Of course, we all have all the chart, I believe. So, okay. So I want to bring up when you said you did this at the High Desert Human Design Conference. But one of my favorite things in your book, when I read people their incarnation cross, obviously she's got multiple pages for each cross, different sections, but there's this little part you always have that I love that is called the dinner party question. And so for my dinner party question, it says, what unique part of you are you needing to empower? So tell me how you see that dinner party question playing out and what that means to you, because I love these. So, but I want to hear
a particular one or in general.
Just in general, the idea of the dinner party question, and then I think maybe I can extrapolate what you mean with that one because I love that question.
Well, I think when I was writing the book, I was loving the idea that we don't hold our cross for ourselves. We hold it for other people. That's the real function of cross. So yeah, we're going to live it in our own lives, of course. But we're really benefiting people that come into our lives. And you can even think that the reason why certain people come to us at certain times is because they need a dose of our cross. And I was just thinking, like, if you just imagine how many people you pass in your daily life, is it simply because they need a dose of me and this theme I'm carrying around me at all times, or do I need a dose of their theme, or mutually? And I thought, well, this would probably actually make a much better introduction than saying to someone, what do you do? If you're at a dinner party and everyone says, oh, what do you do? And it's like a loaded question, and it makes people think that that's the only way that they can value you. It's like, what can you do for me based on what you do in your job? And I thought, how great would it be for me, I'm a person of the Sphinx, so most people I meet are going through a change. So what if I was going up to people and just asking them, what's changing? Are you going through a breakup? Are you changing your job? Like, why have we crossed paths? And I also want to specify that as fun as this game is, I think it's a slippery slope to think that it's our job to solve that for other people. It's not. Our cross is not like anything we have to consciously work on or do for other people ever. It might happen naturally, but just by sitting in someone's aura, you're giving them all the help that they need. You're just giving them the dose. So you could talk to someone about the weather, and then you've helped them on their journey of change, or you've helped them on their journey of abundance. You're just being around them. I mean, I remember saying in the house with someone who's across the spirit, and everybody who becomes friends with her ends up becoming famous. And I was like, all right, I'm ready.
Cross of spirit?
Yeah, cross of spirit people have a very similar, I think of cross of spirit and cross of uncertainty, it's kind of like sisters. They're both like, they really light something up. They bring in something juicy. And they both have the 59 and the 16, I think. I don't remember that.
So it's 59, 55, 14, and 8.
Right, 59, 55.
Well, and they can be in different combos, but
right,
depending on, but that's still mine.
And so that, that's that, like the intimacy of the 59 and the spirit and the creativity of the 55. Like, so that's so juicy. If it's in anybody's cross, any cross that has that, the 3 crosses that have that gate pairing. And I started writing my first book when I was at her house.
Really? I'm going to have to see. Is anybody a cross of spirit? If you want to say it.
And of course, also, you see people with their crosses having the exact opposite experience of the highest embodiment. But anyways, where was I? That we don't have to solve anybody's problem with with that dinner party question. So I'm not going to be saying like, oh, what change are you going through? Let me help you, push you through that change. But it is fun to think of it that way. And then I had always wanted to experiment with that. And like actually throw a dinner party where everybody was given their assignment of their question. I don't leave the house that much, so that probably wasn't, and especially not with people that study human design, but I did get to try that. I ran an incarnation cross workshop at the High Desert Human Design Conference in Santa Fe. And at the end of the class, I gave everybody who had come their dinner party question for their cross. And then I had, the first time I ran, we did a couple rounds of it. The first time I ran it, I had all the projectors and reflectors in the group stay seated. And then I had the generators choose who they're most pulled towards to do this. And then everybody sat for 5 minutes and exchanged their question and just see what kind of conversation flowed when you're prompting for the theme that you carry. Right. And then they switched, and then we did it again where all of the generators sit down and the manifestors could do whatever they wanted. They could go, right. They had no rules on them for this game, as they should. And then the generators were sitting, and then the projectors and reflectors got to decide who they wanted to choose, just to like play with it. And then again, ask the questions and see how that felt. And the report that I got back was that it was really nice.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if anybody has, we only have about 5 minutes left, and we could talk for 5 more hours, I think, and still have plenty to talk about. But if anybody has any specific questions that they want to put in the comments, we can address that. But I have one that I would love to address, and I didn't tell you this ahead of time. So but hopefully, I know that there is, for each cross, there are up to 4 variations of it within. Even like, for example, left angle cross of uncertainty, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. Plus there's the right angle versions of those gates. Then there's the juxtaposition. But when I recently, in a comment on a post where I just asked people, what's your strategy or your type, your authority, and your profile and your cross, somebody said their incarnation crossed, and instead of saying a number, they said through forms or something like that. And I was like, what is this? And I immediately knew that I'd find the answer in your book. But because, like most dense books, you don't read it front to back, I had not really thoroughly read the section in the front. But can you explain a little bit about the difference in how the quarters and how that affects how our crosses play out?
I was wondering if that was quarter. I haven't heard it phrased just like that through forms, but I would assume that they were alluding to the second quarter, cross of duality, or a quarter of duality.
I don't remember now, but if you can just kind of explain a rough idea of what that means.
Yeah. So each quarter is supposed to show which like mode your cross is gonna come out. And I organized cross in the way that made sense to me, which I'm not saying is like the right way to do it. And that's to say that I'm looking at the theme of all those gates together. And if they're in different order, that's okay. If it's with a different profile, that's okay. That adds extra nuance. You add that on top of the theme to bring more nuance to it. And the quarter adds more nuance as well. So the quarter is saying that there's going to be this mode that you express your this theme. And if you're born in the first quarter, the mode is that your cross theme, it's going to be coming out through your mind, through teaching, through speaking, through some kind of clarity of your thoughts. I'm first quarter, and I thought that can't be right because I don't know what I'm thinking about half the time. And I don't know what I'm doing. And you know, I have actually ended up writing books and perhaps a bit unwillingly teaching a little bit. And I don't think I have much clarity of the mind, to be honest. But I have an
open ajna and open head.
But I am actually trying to get clarity. That's often what I'm doing when I write is I'm trying to get clarity in my thoughts, and then I'm sharing with clarity what organization I have put together. Then the second quarter is the quarter of civilization. And that is building things. And I would assume that's what they meant by forms. But that's just a yes. And so the second quarter is, you can think of it almost like a life cycle. Like the first part of the life cycle is like build out your mind. The second part of the life cycle is build out the body, the form, the material. And so the idea is that your cross is going to end up manifesting in some kind of realm related to making physical things a reality, like building things, creating gardens, creating, you know, resorts or retreats, or, you know, something built out a little bit more physically in the world. The third quarter has to do with the reproduction cycle of a life cycle, which has to do with other people. So how we are making connections. So third quarter people, they might see their cross come through in much more interpersonal relationships, interpersonal affairs. It doesn't have to be romance. It doesn't have to be making children, but it does have to do more with how we are relating with other people. And then the final quarter is the most mysterious. It's the end part of a life cycle, and it talks more about transformation. That you'll see crosses coming to transformation, and the best that I can understand that is that fourth quarter people, their cross happens to come about when there are massive endings, upheavals, things kind of closing out or beginning, because those are the most major transformations. And that's also the end part of a life cycle. So things closing out in some way, things being turned on their head, things taking new forms and transfiguring when there's massive change of structures that you might see their cross coming through. I didn't put a huge emphasis on that in the book because I haven't tracked it that much to see if like this is always accurate. Like I didn't look at many people's cross and say, you know, did your cross come through in this way? But it is, you know, it's something to look at.
Yeah, it's cool. Mine is mutation, left angle cross of uncertainty in the quarter of mutation. And so when you say that that's interpersonal, that makes so much sense, especially with the other aspects of my chart, because I am, you know, experiencing those two gates that are on my sacral are hanging gates on an open sacral. So I need to connect for this to happen. Plus I'm a triple split. So, you know, for things to really come together, it's in various interpersonal relationships, even though so much of who I am comes from me really understanding at the deepest core, my individual nature. I have 2 individual channels, 1 tribal channel. So there's this really like deep-seated need for me to own who I am and be relentlessly authentic and, a true 6 line, right? Just be who I'm here to be. But also all of that needs to be in relationship, and the idea of needing that to be called out as a second line. I'm 6'2". So when you put all those layers together, I find it really fascinating. Angel is commenting here and saying that she's also seeing quarter lineups per season, like spring, summer, fall, winter. Love this layer, which as you talked about those, I can see how that would really relate, right? So the spring would be well, I don't know. Would you look at it as the spring being the first, or would that be the fourth?
Well, the first quarter starts February 2nd, so it's not quite seasonal. It'd be actually, that is the beginning of the spring in some cultures. It's the beginning of February.
Right. But I don't know that she means a true calendar. I think she means the metaphorical seasons of spring as in the budding out,
that makes sense.
New idea, right? Versus so lining things up. And I don't mean to speak for Angel, but that's how I would interpret that. And then saying, what was the second one you said is, so we've got the forms that comes in the summer when everything's growing and blooming and right. And then in the fall is the mutation when we've got the color starting to change, things are going dormant. And then winter is, I forget what the fourth one was. What did you say? What did
transformation?
Yeah.
Like
so that's often stuff we don't see in the ending. Like everybody sees winter as when things just die. It's the end. It's like this period of nothingness, but it's not. It's this period of dormancy where, the quality of the winter often is the most important thing that determines what's going to happen in the spring, right? So, and the beauty of summer, they'll say, even in the fall, they'll say, the color is really great because you had a lot of snow in a particular area in winter, or they had a late frost will affect the bloom. So the winter is super important. We just tend to underestimate it because we don't see what's happening. And I think that's a good metaphor for, how we're growing inside is we don't necessarily see it all. So I'm noticing we're over. It's 12:04 here. So I'm wondering if there's anything that you feel that you didn't get to say that you'd really like to say.
Well, I loved everything that we covered. I'm not feeling like we left many things uncovered.
Okay, that's good. Because I feel very complete too, but I always like to give people that opportunity. And I want to thank you so much because I really have enjoyed this. And if it's felt like I'm a little bit fangirling to everybody, it's because I am. I really have so much respect for the way you've explored all these different things in this beautiful, open way that takes us along on your journey and shares your contemplative process and the way you incorporate nature and all these different parts of you in such an open and authentic way. It's really beautiful. And I want to thank you for that. And I want to thank you for coming on here and connecting with us on this. And if people want to work with you, I know you do so many different things. You're still doing graphic design work also, right? Like you're hired for readings, paintings,
writing,
what else?
Can't choose a lane.
Yeah. So Ceremonians is your website. And if you're watching this live or in the next 24 hours, because it'll be on YouTube tonight. I know it's 25% off through the Etsy store only, not through the website or
my website. There was a bit of a glitch, but it should be on the website.
It is on your website too now? Okay, awesome. And what else did I want to say? If there's any other way that is that the best way for people to contact you is through your website or is?
Website's good. You can also find me on Instagram, Ceremonians, CERE.
Yeah, follow her on Instagram. I love your posts.
And
go ahead.
Yeah, I have a TikTok too. Trying to figure out what people want me to post about. And I'm trying to stay on top of it.
Yeah. Just whatever you respond to, right? Whatever you're saying.
Maybe I should start making those yin posts again. I did like making those.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So again, thank you so much. Every week we share stories of how my guests have come to understand themselves in a more loving and empowering way through the lens of human design. How you think and speak about yourself matters. Human design can show you the reframe of not only your own story, but the story you tell yourself about your relationships. If you're ready to start living a better story, I would love to help guide you through the process of embodying who you came here to be. To work with me, you can set up a free discovery call at kathybashanko.com, or just connect with me through social media. So, peace out.